Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. We've spent all this time talking about darkness and its properties and the entities that align with it and use it. It means that we've had a stunningly small amount of time to talk about the light. But in the final shape, there is a lot to say about the nature of the light, the Traveler, and the Gardener. It is all here for us to explore in a variety of places, but there is no place more consequential than the visions of a new hero that has stepped from the background of the lore into the foreground of the story. That hero is Micah 10. She is a fantastic character, and I have made a shamefully small amount of content on Micah on this channel. I think I've only ever mentioned the 6 coyotes, her posse of hunters, in passing, and I can definitely say that there is next to no content on her on my channel from her story on Europa, as told in the Dear Micah Abrams lore book. But realistically, if we wanted to get a better context on the nature of the light, the Traveler, and its properties, and even its origins thanks to these new visions, I think that she is the one who has got to give us all that context, and she is the right character to do it. So today, thanks to Micah, we're going to learn about the visions of light from the Traveler, what it saw at the origins of time, and more about its very nature and how it sees us. So, before we get into this, some background on Micah. Her life on Europa predominantly involved a lot of early confusion and gender dysphoria when she was younger. Micah was assigned male at birth but is a trans woman. Her fathers were helping her through the process, but they also worked for the Clovis Bray Corporation within the Eventide colony, and this put a lot of stress on their familial relationships as a whole. I need to read up more on this, but at a certain point in time, Micah did become an exo. If memory serves, it was a decision made under a certain degree of duress, but don't quote me on that. From this point, Micah Abrams would have become Micah 1, who eventually, after some resets, would have become Micah 10. On Eventide, she ran into Cade 6, with some pretty serious consequences prior to her becoming an exo. There are hints that she might actually have been the one that Cade remembers as his son Ace, given that if she was assigned male at birth, she would have been very much a young child who presented as male. This might then square the circle of who Ace is and answer that whole mystery, but that's a thing I want to save for far later on, and I want to go ahead and actually do a video about that in depth, because it's still something where I don't think we get definitive answers, but we do get a strong push in that direction. Cade would also have a profound influence on Micah in her childhood, but of course, as a Guardian, he wouldn't remember any of this after he was resurrected. The only reason Micah even knows about it is because, well, she went back to Europa and searched up her own past. She found records of her patient log for when she was turned into an exo. She found records of, well, her own letters that she would write. It's something where she is a rare example of a Guardian who found a pretty conclusive and concrete picture into her own past. The most salient detail of this time in Micah's life, though, is that she was receiving strange dreams. The context that we have now is clear. These dreams were dreams sent from the Traveler, or rather, received by Micah from the Traveler. I say that because the idea of dreams being sent to us by the Traveler is a little bit of a misnomer. To put it really simply, Micah was a dreamer, or as we might know it in this Destiny context, a speaker. And yes, I mean speaker as in that speaker. Dreamers were more common back in the Golden Age. They would hear the word of the Traveler and would be overtaken by it in sudden waking dreams. They had no control over these dreams, but the interpretations that they gleaned from them would mark them as visionaries. Beyond her death, Micah maintained this ability and is a marked speaker in our time. It's something we can tell not just by the fact that she receives the visions from the Traveler at all, but also by the fact that much like the old speaker and any others who are associated with this talent, ghosts can commonly be seen flocking to her side, even if they aren't partnered with her. She's actually been given the reverential title of Den Mother, given that she is often a Guardian who looks after several ghosts that are unpartnered and who have not found their own Guardians. And now, from within the pale heart of the Traveler, something else that Micah is particularly attuned to has happened, something utterly remarkable. I don't know exactly how this is. I think it's likely to be the combination of light and dark within the Traveler, that has made everyone's memories real and manifested them in the same space. I think that this might have happened to the Traveler as well. You see, whenever you walk through the Pale Heart, you can see your own memories, Cade's memories, Crow's memories, Ikora's, Zavala's, Savathun's, the Witnesses. All of them are present here. But in all this, we've seen something else manifest. Tangible spheres that look like a miniature version of the Traveler itself. Memories that are tangible enough for us to collect and for Micah to interface with. Thanks to her, these manifestations of the Traveler's memory can be discovered and even experienced. And this is what the Khvostov quest involves. It not only involves you engaging with the other parts of the Pale Heart, but it also engages you with these spheres, these miniature travelers. And when you do engage with one, Micah tells you what she is experiencing through its visions. It's a really special thing, and I can't emphasize this enough. Because of the fact that the Traveler is silent, this is as close as we are going to get to understanding its perspective. These are visions through the eyes of a god, and the only difference we get between them and the first-person account, as if the Traveler was talking to us itself, is the fact that Micah is there and has to interpret for us. She is the one who can tell us of this primal truth, but it does have to be through her eyes. She is one of the only ones who can interpret these visions at all, and despite the fact that that is a third-person interpretation, it is still the best thing we have when we have to concern ourselves with what lies within. If you've had any questions about the nature of the Traveler, its creation, you might find some answers here. Within its pale heart and with these visions manifested before her, Micah is seeing through the Traveler's own eyes. So let's see what she sees. We embark on this journey today, and we're going to look at the first 3 of 8 visions from the Traveler. We're going to look at a whole bunch of different things that Micah tells us about and shows us, and we're going to look at her story in depth and what it reveals, because she is an incredible character with regards to telling us about more of the universe, the light and dark, and everything else. When I'm done telling you all about those stories, I'll tell you about Micah herself, but for the moment, let's dig in on the perspective of the Traveler and the primal nature of its creation. This is the first of the 3 visions we're going to look at today. This one can be found within the Cyst encounter near the seclusion. Take a listen.
I feel impressions of the Traveler's experiences in this object. I can see them. I will try to interpret as best as I can. This impression is jumbled, faded, ancient. I see stars, a haze of cosmic energy, carnelian and jade whirling into infinity, fear, hope, then an abrupt severance, something lost or someone. It isn't clear. Dust clings to the air like motes of starlight, glittering. A new distinction between what is and what was, but a tether remains indivisible. Light casting a shadow, and shadow defining the shape of light. Then... no, nothing. It's gone. I'm sorry.
You did your best. Thank you for trying.
Those colors. I feel like I've seen them somewhere before, in a half-remembered dream.
This may be an ancient memory of the Traveler. Something from the dawn of time. Maybe so old as to have no significance. And yet, I cannot help but wonder.
I just can't lie. Micah at the end saying, "I cannot help but wonder." It puts a smile on my face every time I hear it. I can't tell you how many times that kind of mentality has prompted me down remarkable paths of discovery in the lore. Anyway, what does all this mean? Well, this first vision tells us a lot, and yet not much at all. I'm going to go ahead and interpret the interpretation for you. Haha, this is why Destiny's lore is all about perspective. The first vision potentially shows the birth of the universe, as Micah said, but perhaps more importantly, I want to feed into that idea with a bit more context. This vision mentions a haze of cosmic energy, but also 2 specific colors, carnelian, which is a sort of browner shade of red, almost akin to dried blood, and jade, which is of course a lighter but still very robust shade of green. There is one place in Destiny that perfectly matches these two colors with its color palette, and we can see it from all the way back in Destiny 1's vanilla campaign. I am of course talking about the Black Garden. The area is predominantly covered in green, grassy surfaces and has a light of green haze in the air. But that landscape is also peppered with a very specific kind of flower, one that Prince Aldrin recovered from the Black Garden before the time when we were reborn as a Guardian. That flower is Asphodelia. You can find it in the Dreaming City, where its vibrant colors have faded into a gentle pink, but where it originates from in the Black Garden, its true colors can be seen, a muddy red, like carnelian. This is just conjecture, but this vision would seem to support the idea that the garden before time that keeps being mentioned in Unveiling, where time supposedly began at the onset of the additional rule added into the flower game by the gardener. Yeah, it adds to the conjecture that that garden is in fact the Black Garden. Our first bit of proof for this was the stump of the tree. The second seems to be the presence of these colors in this vision as the universe was created. When Micah sees them, that's what I think of at least. But again, that's conjecture, so let me know if you agree or if there's somewhere else where those colors might be of significance. There is something more that we should look at when it comes to this moment, because I think that the vision and what Micah's speaking of also has further relevance to the story of Unveiling. In particular, take a look at the Winnower's perspective as listed in Unveiling in the First Knife lore entry. It offers us an alternative perspective of what happened, but I think it's still very relevant. Take a listen. "No," the gardener said. "I am the growth and preservation of complexity. I will make myself into a law in the game." And thus we too became part of the game, and the laws of the game became gnomic and open to change by our influence. And I had only one purpose and one principle in the game, and I could do nothing but continue to enact that purpose, because it was all that I ever was and ever would be. I think the moment in the vision where Micah talks about seeing carnelian and jade is talking about the moment after this happened, the moment after the Gardener and the Winnower became laws in the game of existence itself, when they faded from the Black Garden in some manner and either created or became part of the physical universe. I did state that this might be a passage showing the beginning of the universe near to the start of the analysis, but the reality is that we just can't be absolutely sure if that's the case, or if life existed prior to this and this was simply the addition of the Winnower and the Gardener into the reality that we now know. The Winnower would state that this was the beginning of time, but I'm not so sure. That's part of what I don't necessarily trust about this, but even so, I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that it's academic at this point. We can also clearly state that even if it was just the Winnower and the Gardener, or the dominant pattern in the Flower game, or even if that was the Vex, that life did exist prior to this point. So calling it the beginning of the universe, it means that it's a bit of a misnomer as well. It's also worth remembering that all of this is being told through metaphor, so it's vague by design. The exact nature of things is not going to be revealed, and even then we're listening to Micah's interpretation, which I'm then interpreting for you. So yeah, many layers of different people feeding you this information. Don't take everything I say to be completely true, there's just no way of knowing it. Regardless, there is something else that can be noted here, which I think is the most concrete of things we can draw from this moment and this vision. As I'm sure some of you will have picked up on, there is a moment here that talks about a division. It's shown to Micah through this vision. First of all, the obvious bit is the separation and the invisible tether between two things. This seems to clearly be referencing the moment when the Gardener and the Winnower became rules in the universe and split. In doing so, I think it not only references this moment of the Traveler's creation, but also the creation of the Veil, and furthermore, I believe that this moment additionally references the separation of these two entities. If you observe the Veil and the Traveler structurally, you can see that the Veil has a mycelial structure at its base, which looks like the equivalent of a root system, a tangle of different threads moving outwards from the main structure. The question then becomes this: what were these adjoined to? And a very common observation is that the roots of the veil curve as though they would be gripping a sphere. This is the moment at which one can make a very obvious observation that maybe the veil was at one point gripping the traveler, and thus the two entities were once conjoined. If that is the case, then, well, maybe this moment is showing that separation. But furthermore, the idea of the inseparable but invisible tether is important, because this echoes what we learned from Asa, which is that the Precursor people discovered the veil by means of studying the Traveler and realizing that it was cosmically linked and twinned to another great construct out in space. That was how they found the veil. That is how they thought they could merge it with the Traveler, by bringing the two of them together. Because whilst the Traveler was a thing of light, the veil was a thing of darkness, and in that there could be symmetry and potentially a purpose for the Precursors. There is also the important note that the Traveler felt like it was separated from something or someone. This is incredibly important stuff as well, following the revelation that the Winnower does indeed exist. This sudden feeling of separation from someone might confirm that the Gardener is the Traveler, and that the Winnower is the Veil, at least as far as their physical manifestations are concerned. To meet with the Winnower and the Gardener would likely be different than stepping into the Traveler or falling into the Veil, but regardless, these constructs are probably their physical manifestations, and it's also worth remembering that the Winnower and Gardener seem to be many different things bound up into one. They are rules of the universe, they are ancient alien entities, they are gods, they are physical constructs found within the universe. Even if they do at one point manifest before us in some kind of tangible physical being, I would be tempted to say that that is not truly them, but instead an avatar of them, momentary manifestations of their godlike presence. But to call them godlike in that moment does also complicate things somewhat, as we can see from the next vision of the Traveler. If I'm not mistaken, this vision can be found in the Refraction. Go ahead and take a listen to this.
I can feel the Traveler's presence radiating from this object. Memories and experiences, emotions and ideas blooming in my mind. I see so many cities, so many peoples basking in my light. They study me, and in their discoveries they come to understand the universe. I am a blueprint for them to follow, a canvas upon which the mysteries of the universe are written. These little gardeners are such careful stewards of fragility, but then they begin kneeling. They plead, beg, demand. I do not know what to do. There is confusion, helplessness, guilt. There's nothing more.
Does this mean that the great machine does not wish to be worshipped?
I don't know if I'd interpret it that way. It may be more a lack of frame of reference. It doesn't understand reverence or worship. But that also doesn't mean it can't learn. But that it's still trying to understand us. Or maybe it never will. Does that invalidate faith?
I do not know. It provides a question. And I suppose it is on me to ponder the answer. For the truest answers lie within ourselves.
This vision is interesting because it casts doubt on the idea that the Traveler wants to be worshipped. It also perhaps sees us further reinforce this idea that I put forward a few videos back, that the Traveler provides bounty to those that it uplifts with the intent of letting them make decisions independently of it. Micah's interpretation does emphasize that it admires what wonderful little gardeners they've become, and how they are careful stewards of fragility, which perhaps shows that it does at least have a preference for those that work to tend life and grow it outside the rules of the Winnower. So perhaps it is overly reductive to say that the Traveler has no preference for what we do with our own destinies, but it might be accurate to still say that it won't intervene. There is minutiae to work out on this topic regardless, and first assertions are almost never completely correct. Either way, the fascinating part of this particular vision is the idea that this could apply to any number of civilizations. Many people would sit and kneel and worship the Traveler in their own way. Humanity, the Eliksni, almost certainly even the precursor civilizations. In fact, I think that this is a reflection of what was going on with the precursor people. It speaks to their story as a people that lacked purpose and a people who were capable of great terraforming and the cultivation of life in their own time. Our logs recovered by Ido from the Enteliki lawbook reflect on this idea and show us that they all had the ability to cultivate star systems into vibrant spaces of life with their own technology. It's not very well known, but the Enteliki lawbook actually tells us that the original models of the more ancient pyramid vessels weren't actually warships, they were life ships. Some of the raid lore even references that some of the precursors who ended up being dissenters within the Witness literally were gardeners in their time. Not just gardeners in the sense that they tended to vegetation, but gardeners in the sense that they created fantastical trees with dozens of different kinds of flowering and pollinating fruits. Putting all that aside, the confusion displayed in this vision within the Traveler's own perspective, as shown to us by Micah, is an interesting thing all on its own because it shows a god being very fallible. If this vision is referencing the precursor people in particular, they may well have been the very first civilization uplifted by the Traveler, and if in that moment they were starting to look for answers, this vision adequately displays how it is very detached as a god, and how this might be a novel moment for it. I think this also forces us to rethink divinity from what it is in the more traditional sense. I think it's very easy for us to see something divine as something with greater knowledge than ourselves, a greater perspective, but the reality is that from on high, the perspective that the Traveler might have in order to understand why people would worship it is actually the thing that it's lacking. This is what's leading it to such great confusion. It means that despite being a thing of divine power, the Traveler is absolutely capable of flaws, and is capable of the more than human emotions of fear and doubt, something which the next passage will touch on a lot. It also, I think, displays the later part of the precursor people's story, as they literally search for purpose. But once more, this next passage could refer to any number of civilizations. This can be found within the Impasse. Take a listen.
The Traveler's experiences are imprinted on this object. I can feel them, feel its emotions, see what it saw. I will try to interpret confusion, frustration, pain. Many needing voices cry out for answers, but there are none to give. They project their own aspirations onto the Traveler, but it is not what they think it is. It does not have the answers they seek. It does not remember. Memory is heavy now. It feels like dense metal, a weight around one's neck. Nothing but dread and poisonous doubt remains. It fears the act of thought. I can't make out anymore.
Not a god. Not even silent. Just a being desperate for help. I once thought the Traveler was a foundational cornerstone of the universe. But now it feels as though it is just as afraid and uncertain as we are.
Just because someone doesn't have all the answers doesn't make them any less important. Micah's vision may seem to say the Traveler didn't have answers, but that doesn't mean it sees the universe the same way we do. Perhaps it just has a hard time explaining what it sees to us. There's many ways to interpret that vision.
The words of Micah in this vision are eerily similar to one of the oldest pieces of lore on this topic that's ever been written in Destiny. It's a Grimoire card from all the way back in the House of Wolves expansion in 2015. a grimoire card called Ghost Fragment, the Traveler. Take a listen to this. You have lived as invisibly as possible, flicking from solar system to solar system, making grand plans, overseeing the culturing of civilizations before leaving in a blink. But you have no recollection of ever wanting worship or even thanks from those blessed by you. But memory is heavy now. It feels like lead and neutronium and electroweak matter fashioned into a moon-sized ball that you must carry as you move. Now your flight is rapid, your vast mind infected with such dread and toxic doubt that you find yourself afraid of the simple act of thought. And it is your children you must turn to now, in time of need. This grimoire card is a reflection of the Traveler's purpose, and also I think it's a reflection on the nature of the light itself. The light literally forgets. It represents a fresh start. It represents possibilities grown anew. The darkness, on the other hand, remembers. I think this is a reflection of the Traveler running from the Witness for so long that it cannot bear to think beyond its own grand plans. The light is perhaps having an impact on the Traveler to the same extent that it has on Guardians. Perhaps this is why both the Vision and the Grimoire describe the Traveler as perceiving its memory as being heavy. It perhaps has to release some of those memories as it continues onward in its grand journey across the universe. The beginning of the Vision also seems to show that there were people looking to the Traveler for purpose and answers, and this again could be any number of civilizations, but the precursors come to mind again because they were the first. But the idea of the Traveler being worshipped clearly isn't new to many cultures that it has influenced. There's no supporting lore to suggest it, but I bet that if you went back and checked the different areas that the Traveler has been to, and checked the civilizations that it uplifted, you could go to places like Lubrae, Thunderment's Ammonite Moon, or Anna Harmony, and you'd find cultural indications that the Traveler was petitioned by each species in a formal or religious sense, potentially both, and each time that petition would have been met with silence. Again, this all leads me back to that notion that divinity within Destiny's canon is something that we need to think of as a little bit less than perfect, simply because it lacks that perspective of a less powerful being. Whilst I don't exactly find myself agreeing with either Zavala or Crow in completeness, I do think that their two perspectives combined make a more perfect picture, something which maybe gives us a better idea of what the whole looks like. Something where you can understand that the Traveler is afraid and needs help and is reaching out in this moment of desperation, but also something which portrays the fact that the Traveler is a perspective far above our own, and that communicating with us might be difficult or might not necessarily be part of its desires. Something interesting to figure out there as time goes on. This is by far the most nebulous of visions, but it does also give us an idea of why the Traveler doesn't want to speak yet again, something that we've also discussed at length here. For now though, I want to go ahead and end this first video on Micah and the Traveler's visions here. Next time, we're going to explore the Traveler's perspective on the events of the collapse, the creation of the ghosts, and the Guardians, as well as speakers such as Crow and Micah. It might seem a little odd to say it, but I feel kind of privileged to be covering these moments in the lore right now. There has been a lot of build-up to these reveals over 10 years, and the writers have been able to weave and execute on ideas that have sometimes been convoluted, and most certainly are not necessarily their own because Destiny's lore has been written over 10 years. Getting some simple answers on the nature of these ancient beings is quite something. To simply know that it was likely the case that the Traveler was attached to the Veil, that the Veil is probably to the Winnower as the Traveler is to the Gardener, to get an insight into its most ancient moments and memories, and to get a hint that once again points back to its connection to the Black Garden. All of this is fascinating stuff that warrants further examination for years to come. But that'll all have to wait for another day. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, go ahead and leave a like, and leave your own thoughts down below in the comments section. I'm sure you are bound to have some, given the nature of this topic. Also, if you want more Destiny lore content, go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on email notifications. But as per usual, know that your viewership, as always, has been quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Bife. Rhodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.